Positive news for the public broadcaster. After a 6-month delay, the SABC now has a new board. President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed the 12-member team to serve the public broadcaster for 5 years. Katutselo Ramokumba has been appointed chairperson of the board. And former SABC head of news, Patiswa Mogopani, makes a comeback to the public broadcaster as a board member now. Let's speak to SANEF, that's the SA National Editors Forum. Its Treasurer General Tshamano Makhadi joins us now. Tshamano, thank you so much for coming into studio. I mean, this has been long awaited, and it's an important appointment because, of course, we're going in for a general election next year. What's your reaction to the board, having looked through the list of candidates? What do you make of it all?
No, I think there's an interesting mix. People coming from different backgrounds. Katutselo Ramokumba, whom you speak about, is a chartered accountant, currently the CFO of UNISA. And obviously there's a number of other people. I mean, you mentioned the name of Patiswa Mogopani. Of course, there are many others who come really from different backgrounds, bringing different skills. So one can only hope that all these individuals will have an understanding of the importance of the SABC. Yes, it has been a long time coming, 6 months. It's been, long overdue. This is an appointment which should have been finalized a long time ago.
Why do you think it wasn't?
Look, it can be attributed to a number of things, but obviously, as you know, people have different, theories. But for what we know, the president has delayed requesting for certain individuals still to be, to be vetted. But that process had already been concluded because it was Parliament who actually submitted those names. So by the time the names were submitted, it simply means it needed the approval, or rather the signature of the president, to give them a go-ahead to continue to do the work which they needed to do.
Let's talk about Patiswa Mogopani. She was head of news, and then she was ousted, essentially. The charges for not preventing a broadcast wasn't meant to go ahead. And she argued there that really that was well below her purview. And eventually this matter went to court and it was settled. But she did lock horns with the then board. Now she comes back as a board member. Do you see this as a positive sign, that ultimately this is an SABC that has someone at the helm who knows how the organisation runs? She's got strong news credentials, but she also knows what it's like to feel pressured by a board, because she said she was put under extreme pressure by the previous board to conduct an interview with the president during the election period. She was also openly criticised by Fikile Mbalula, who was head of the elections for the ANC at the time, basically accusing her of costing the ANC votes because of the kind of programming they did. Now she's a board member. Do you think that this is a really important step and a sign that this board is going to be independent, free-thinking, and be exactly what the SABC needs?
Quite an interesting twist, really, if you look at it. You would not expect that such an appointment would happen just over a year from the time when she left the SABC. But somebody, obviously, who comes with a great wealth of experience within broadcasting, obviously having been with that institution for years. She knows the ins and outs. But over and above, somebody who many look up to as somebody with a great work ethic. So if I were to look at the mix, which I did spoke about earlier, I do think that she will add quite, a good contribution in terms of the skills that she brings, obviously from an editorial point of view. I'm sure those are some of the things which she would want to contribute on. Of course, going into next year, there's a big election. Some are already saying probably the most crucial election we're going into. Obviously, there's very limited time to work around, the preparations for things like that. But of course, there are a number of things that still needs to happen within the SABC if you talk about the finances of that institution. For what we know, the SABC has been in trouble for many years, and those are some of the things which they still have to work around, making sure that they get the finances right. But of course, there's also about content, which is quite a big thing. If you look at where we are today, the market, of course, is very, very competitive. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done within the SABC, quite frankly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Interesting to note as well that advocate Magdalene Munsami, and I was trying to rack my brain as to why her name was so familiar. Of course, she is a former EFF MP, but she's also the advocate for Kelly Khumalo, and we saw her featuring quite a lot during parts of that trial. So as you say, there's an interesting mix of people and skills on the SABC board. Big challenges ahead, and also, of course, because broadcasting is changing with the advent of streaming services. People are moving away from linear television and towards these services where they can pick and choose what they want. So what do you think the board needs to embrace as we move into this election year? You've already mentioned the finances, but what would you say are the big things they need to keep top of mind?
I think content really... It's one big thing. If you look at how people consume content, I mean, it has changed. If I were to just look back over the last 5-10 years, it has changed so much. I mean, there's so many competitors. You have your Showmax, you have your Netflix, you name it. Of course, they find themselves not in a so much easy space, but I do hope that they will make consideration into all of these things, because if you're talking about the finances of the institution, of course you need to draw those numbers. It goes beyond news. It is about the entertainment space, whether you're talking about the soapies. People always talk about, the storylines. Do we still have the brilliant storylines which would attract, and if I were to just think back to some of their programs, 7 million, 10 million viewership, it's all of these things which they need to be thinking about. But as well, if you're thinking about local content, which is also quite a big thing, if you were to compare against what MultiChoice is doing. Obviously, there's a lot of local content which they are putting on air, which speaks to South Africans. So SABC really, I think they have quite a big challenge, and I just hope that this board will be given the opportunity to do the work in which they are supposed to do, and not have this thing where within 2 years or 3 years you now have to change the board, which is always a
that instability is not good, and let's hope they all know. Certainly Patiswa Mogopani knows where the board's authority ends and the executive, the chief executives and the news room begins. It's an important distinction. Thank you so much for joining us in studio. Treasurer General of SANEF, that's the SA National Editors Forum, Tshamano Makhadi there. Now still to